Welcome to the George C. Marshall Center's Strategically Speaking. This podcast series explores the future of NATO in an era of global change. Join us as experts shed light on the challenges and evolution of the Atlantic Alliance. Stay tuned for insightful discussions on international security and NATO's path forward.
A warm welcome to the Marshall Center's podcast series on NATO at 75, the future of the Atlantic Alliance in tumultuous times. I am Fritz, Professor of International Security.
And I am Piotr, Rear Admiral in the Polish Navy, seconded to the Marshall Center.
Today, we have a very distinguished guest with us, His Excellency Ambassador Deividas Matulionis, the permanent representative of the Republic of Lithuania to the North Atlantic Council, who is joining us from NATO headquarters in Brussels. Ambassador, a warm welcome to you, and thank you so very much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. We are recording this session on April 12th, 2024. The podcast session today is related to our Marshall Center Alumni Scholar Group research project on NATO at 75, which was actually initiated by one of your very own, Justyna Slanita, from your foreign ministry, who came up with this excellent idea. The results of the project, including her fantastic paper on the Eastern flank, will be published in time for the Washington summit. Ambassador, let me take this opportunity to thank you and your country for sending such first-rate officials to our Marshall Center programs. I'm confident that Justyna has a bright future ahead of her. So thank you so very much indeed.
Welcome also from my side, Ambassador. It is such a privilege to have you as our podcast guest today. Allow me to take a brief moment to introduce you to our audience. Ambassador Deividas Matulionis has been the Lithuanian permanent representative to NATO since 2020. This post is his third ambassadorial assignment. He was representing Lithuania in Denmark and Iceland from 2001 to 2006, and as well in Germany from 2012 to 2017. Upon returning from Germany and before arriving to Brussels, he was an advisor to the Prime Minister of Lithuania for Foreign Policy and first Deputy Chancellor of the government.
Just recently, on the 4th of April, NATO foreign ministers commemorated the signing of the Washington Treaty by its 12 founding members 75 years ago, and the alliance's long and rather successful history. Your foreign minister was amongst those who spoke on that day. Ambassador, in your view, what are the biggest challenges for the alliance now and into the future?
Well, thank you for this question. First of all, I would like to say that 75 years of peace, NATO in principle established conditions for peace and security in the European continent, and NATO helped economic development in the western part of Europe, and therefore it's really important that we are members of NATO since 2004. Exactly 2 weeks ago, we celebrated our 20th anniversary in NATO, and as our former first president of Lithuania said, NATO is for us, NATO is for life, the European Union is for better life. And it reflects in a short sentence the essence, why it's so important. Finally, we became a part of Western community, and this is a historical lesson we took after a difficult 20th century when 1940, in spite of our neutrality policy, Lithuania was invaded and then later annexed by Soviet Union, and afterwards in 1 year by Nazi Germany, and then 1944 again by Soviet Union, and then this lasted until 1990. And therefore we were very consistent in joining NATO and the European Union, and that was a very clear goal of all political parties. And thanks God we are in, and we are enjoying security guarantees and collective defense and peaceful development in the European Union. When it comes to NATO and NATO challenges, yes, NATO has many challenges, but NATO has always many challenges since the establishment of this organization in 1949, and 75 years, and now we are in the situation of full-fledged war. I mean, not we, NATO, but in our neighborhood, Russia launched a full-fledged war against Ukraine. And even 3 years ago, nobody was expecting that it will be the case, in spite of all this aggressive and revisionist, opportunistic policy of Russia in Georgia and in Crimea. The main challenges in our view is to adapt to the current situation. We used to live since 1990 in the period of peace dividends. And this period was, in a way, positive time. There was a time of hope, but at the same time, we somehow misunderstood real intentions of Russia, and especially after Putin came to power. And in principle, we tried to establish a policy of engagement and policy of cooperation and partnership with Russia. And we, in 1997, we signed agreement, not we, actually, we were not members at that time, but NATO signed an agreement, so-called NATO-Russia Founding Act. Later, we established NATO-Russia Council. We had many meetings. We tried to stretch hand of friendship and peace to Russia. Even there were talks, I mean, do we need NATO at all? And maybe it's obsolete, as organization. And so NATO paid less attention to deterrence and defense as a reason of NATO when it was established. Many allies reduced their defense forces and financed less defense. During the Cold War, average was around 3% of GDP spent to defense. And then during this 30 years, we reduced our spending. Even Lithuania actually was among those who spent 2008, 2010, around 0.8, 0.9% of GDP to defense. I'm trying to say that the major issue for NATO now is to reestablish our collective defense approach. I mean, NATO should go back to the raison d'etre, to the collective defense. And we need some time, we need resources, and we need to have much more robust and strong deterrence and defense policy. Because finally, we understood that Russia, they do not respect this dual track approach. In principle, dual track approach, when it comes to the current Russia, has failed. And we need to strengthen our deterrence and defense policy. And this is challenge number one. At the same time, we need to restore our collective defense capabilities, to restore national capabilities, and to spend more money for defense. It's very good that in the Vilnius summit just last year, we decided that 2% of GDP for defense is minimum, it's a floor. And even now we are thinking that this number is already absolute minimum, and we need to have more ambitious goal. We would be in favor of having, this, target to reach 3% within NATO. And I'm certain that this fair burden sharing issue will be also part of our discussion during Washington summits, because we Europeans especially should pay more attention to our defense and to spend more money. And of course, we cannot always say that America is paying almost 4% and we are completely dependent on American defense budget. We should do more, but within NATO. And we will never agree with the proposal that Europe should have a separate autonomous defense policy, but it should be part of NATO. And we need to keep unity and solidarity within NATO. At the current situation, it's very important. We need to send a very strong message to Russia that we will be supporting as long as it's necessary, as long as we are saying, as long as Ukraine wins. And also, we need to send a message that NATO is a defensive alliance and we will be doing everything possible to defend rules-based international order and our territory. And therefore, forward defense concepts and new regional plans, which are, in the place of implementation, is the most important issue besides support to Ukraine, which is also a big challenge, I must admit. And we see some fatigue in some member states, and we need to somehow to reinvigorate again this issue.
Ambassador, thank you very much for your bird's eye view on the security environment and security situation. Let's focus now a little bit more on the eastern flank and Lithuania in particular. So how do you see the strategic environment that you have just described is influencing the security situation of eastern flank and Lithuania in particular? And what makes this strategic environment, in your view, so demanding, difficult, and unpredictable for our region?
Yeah, well, thank you very much. Of course, strategic environment is very unpredictable, and because, as I mentioned, we are having very clear direct threats, and this is very clearly stated in all our recent documents that Russia and terrorism are two threats to NATO. And we have, as far as Lithuania is concerned, we have to deal with the Russian threat. Lithuanian geographical position is also peculiar. We have in the west Russian border, this is Kaliningrad region, a heavily militarized area. But in the east, we have Belarus, which is a proxy of Russia and almost fully integrated into Russian military doctrine and also into military forces. And war in Ukraine showed that Belarus was used in full extent. And from the Belarusian territory, Kiev region was attacked, and big forces were deployed and then used against Ukraine. And we think that Russia will definitely will not stop. Russia will try to get influence in the countries bordering Russia. First of all, countries which Russia used to occupy, and since Lithuania and other Baltic states are not so big and our defense forces are not very big, we need to create, first of all, environment which would, prevent Russia to test readiness of NATO and readiness of Lithuania. And therefore, we are going to increase our defense budget. We have now, this year, 2.75% of GDP spent to our defense. And this is the highest increase among NATO allies in terms of dynamics, in terms of, comparing with, for example, 2014. Then in 10 years period, our defense budget in money terms increased 5 times, in percentage 3 times. And we are really worried about all plans of Russia to how to say to increase forces in the western Russia and to reform it and to create two additional districts instead of western military district to have Moscow and Leningrad district, to increase forces at the Finnish border, and also to substantially increase forces in Kaliningrad region. At the moment, we cannot say that there is an imminent threat to Lithuania from Russian side, because Russia concentrates its efforts, aggressive efforts against Ukraine. But the problem is that Russian forces have very, how to say it, mobility of Russian forces is higher than NATO forces. And therefore, if they want to increase in Kaliningrad, it could take 2-3 weeks, and then they will have higher deployment of forces both in Kaliningrad or in Belarus if they decide to do it. And of course, from time to time, Russia organizes exercises at our borders. Zapad exercises, famous, more than 100,000 troops participate. Again, it's additional risk of, if not full-fledged invasion, but at least testing readiness of the allies. And we don't think that there should be, in the coming years, full-fledged invasion. But for example, to test readiness to protect Suwalki corridor, it's really a challenge to us, and therefore we need to strengthen allied presence and strengthen our national defense forces in order to create as high as possible threshold to Russia, and to strengthen our deterrence policy, which is of greatest importance. And therefore we are doing everything possible to have more allied troops in Lithuania. And you know that we have since several years already American battalion, and we are working with Germany with this, how to say, unique project, establishing permanently based German brigade as part of the client's efforts in Lithuania. And last week, first unit arrived, and process will continue until we hope that it will be deployed 2026, but the final deadline is the beginning of 2027. We need to do ourselves a lot. Host nation support is part of it, and we will be spending additional money. And how much, I don't know yet, but it's not millions, but probably even more than 1 billion euros for, host nation support, building necessary infrastructure and training and exercise grounds in Lithuania. That would be great. And also, besides that, we need to establish much closer relationship when it comes to reinforcement with Poland, which is on the other side of the border. And we're also having some plans to exercise with Polish forces, and Polish forces are on the other side also deployed, and quick reinforcements of additional allied forces in case if something is coming, if indications and warnings are showing that possible military incident is imminent. Those are probably the most important challenges we are facing. And also, as I mentioned before, challenge how to increase military support to Ukraine. We are doing a lot. We are among those countries with the highest, support percentage. Probably in absolute numbers, we are not the biggest, but in terms of GDP, we are among the 3 most supportive countries to Ukraine.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for your very interesting thoughts on the security environment. And I'd like to build on your statement which you made just a few minutes ago, saying that the goal of Lithuania is to create environment which prevents Russia from testing NATO. And in this context, we've been talking obviously about Russia and Belarus. You mentioned Germany, you mentioned Poland, but I'd like for us to look a little bit west and the north. The alliance members have increased. And how do you see how the accession of Finland and Sweden changed the security situation of the Baltic Sea region?
Well, Swedish and Finnish accession is one of the most important achievements of NATO recently. And since Lithuania is a Baltic Sea state, definitely Swedish, especially Swedish, and also Finnish accession is of great importance. And now we can say that the Baltic Sea region is, the whole region is a NATO region, except Kaliningrad and probably some parts of St. Petersburg region. This is probably in a few years we will consider this as one of the most important historical decisions. Just taking into account that Sweden was always associated with neutrality, with non-allied status. And now Sweden, since 1814, using this policy of neutrality and non-alignment, has finally decided to join NATO. It's first of all, it's a defeat to Putin because he stimulated, in principle, decision in Finland and Sweden. Probably it would be not so quick as it happened now. When it comes to our defensibility, Swedish and Finnish accession adds to the additional strategic depth in the Baltic region, and also possibilities for quicker reinforcement. Lithuania and all Baltic states were dependent on land reinforcement corridor, Suwalki corridor. Now we have alternative. Maybe it's not 100% comparable alternative, but alternative. Using ferries and using some additional vessels to reinforce Baltic states through Swedish territory. Then for quick reinforcement, in case of short notice incidents, we have alternate. For Estonia, it's even better because Finland is even closer. It would be even more important for Estonia. At the same time, we must admit that Finland has always been a country with a lot of attention to defense forces. But we know the unique, reserve system. We know the, efforts to establish well-functioning resilience system. We can learn from Finland a lot. We also know that Finland has strong land and forces, and also a navy and air forces, and they are spending all the time. They spend more than 2% of GDP for defense. It's a strong ally, of course, with the longest border with Russia, but they understand how to deal with this neighbor, and they have good, defense forces. Sweden as well. Especially when it comes to air and air forces and navy, Sweden is exceptional. And also land forces may be smaller, but I must also tell that Sweden has is going to allocate to assign a lot of forces to the regional defense, and it shows that both countries, they are not simply trying to be security consumers, but they would like to contribute to to the security of the region, of the Nordic region, and we hope also to the Baltic Sea region in general, because Sweden has the longest coastline in the Baltics, and Gotland has a specific role in terms of strategic importance. And of course, Kaliningrad is isolated in this way, and for Russia it's a problem. And in terms of some, incidents, military incidents, of course, Kaliningrad region position is not as good as used to be.
Thank you very much for this. Allow me to come back to an issue that you have already alluded to. And you said that actually Monday this week, the first elements of the German brigade arrived in your country, and there was a very nice ceremony in the presence of your Minister of Defense marking the event. Beyond what you have already commented on, can you tell us about what this means for your country in terms of deterrence and defense, in terms of added security? You also mentioned host nation support and, of course, overall the bilateral relations.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm really happy. Since I was ambassador in Germany, I have a certain affinity to Germany, and it's great that after EFP battalion, we are now moving towards a full-fledged brigade, permanently based, and this is probably one of the most visible, sign of German Zeitenwende policy of the current government.
Sure.
And also courageous decision of Minister Pistorius. Even last year, we still had some discussion, should be, based in Lithuania permanently on a rotational basis or on the basis of quick reinforcement. And finally, we made agreement with Germany that it will be permanently based. And when it comes to deterrence situation, comparing with 1940, we had no Allied forces at that time. Now we have commitment, Article 5 commitment, and we are thinking, and we already have some Allied forces in Lithuanian territory, American and German forces, and besides that, nuclear deterrence. It's also should not be ignored. And those two elements, and they create much more, secure environment for Lithuanian state in case of something is happening. And this is a real deterrence. With Germany, we have a special group established, special working group, which is, establishing some steps, what should be done from German side, what should be done from our side, and the timelines, when it should be done. And when it comes to Germany, I understand that, first of all, they need to fully build this brigade and to equip it with necessary military equipment, and to be capable also to not only just to be present, but to be capable to fight, to defend the territory of the alliance. It's a question of prepositioning of ammunition, prepositioning of equipment, and all other military means. From our side, it's important to build or to provide housing to the soldiers, to the officers, and to the families, because permanent stationing means that some will come with the families, and therefore, first of all, housing. Second, social infrastructure for the families, kindergartens and schooling, which is also a big challenge, and we hope that we will be able to solve it only with Germany, because to build German schools well and to have sufficient number of teachers we will definitely be needing. German support to that. And also training grounds. We have several training ranges which are available at the moment, but we are building new because they need to have, exercises, they need to have training with our forces and interoperability and compatibility. And this is our part, and we will be investing money, and we have already started this. And of course, command and control element is also important. So, and we are still discussing brigade, under which command. We think that, as far as I know, this will be under the command of the German division, and then this German division will be under command of Northeast Corps in Szczecin, and this and the relationship with Lithuanian brigades. You know that we're also building a division size unit in Lithuania and increasing numbers, and will be reintroducing soon full conscript system, since we have still partial conscript system. This is also one of the issues we are going to do. And from our side, we also need to build storages for ammunition for this brigade, so-called prepositioning project, and for the equipment. This is another part which has to be implemented. But having in mind that 5,000 troops is for small countries a big number, since our troops at the moment are Lithuanian National Defense Force around 16,000, up for the additional 5,000, it's a big number. And I think in terms of our international cooperation, this is the most important project in defense and security policy at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I'd like to come back to the issue of Ukraine. You have briefly touched on this subject already in your earlier statements. We as NATO are currently in the midst of preparing for a Washington summit in July. Discussions are ongoing as to how to continue the support for Ukraine in the short term and what to do longer term. And I know that it is still early days, but can you share with us your expectations regarding the determination of the alliance's future relationship with Kiev? What is your view in this area?
Lithuania, there is no secret still to anyone that Lithuania is always very supportive to the Ukrainian accession to NATO. We think that even if alliance would have the courage to invite Ukraine some years ago, before 2014, to NATO, probably everything what is happening now would not be happening. But at that time, there was not the sufficient political will. First attempt was 2008 in Bucharest. In principle, then our leaders declared that Ukraine will be a member of NATO, but without any clear timeline. In our view, that would be the best, security insurance for Ukraine in the longer run, in the future. And we will be trying to convince our colleagues, allies, that we need to make additional effort to integrate closer Ukraine into NATO in Washington summit. Of course, it's not easy issue, and because there are some differences on this political track within the alliance. You know that some bigger allies have a more cautious approach. I wouldn't say that they are against, but they are more cautious, especially that we are at the moment confronting with full-fledged war, And nobody in NATO is speaking that Ukraine should be invited now into NATO. Even Lithuania has, as some are saying, the most hawkish country when it comes to the Ukrainian accession to NATO. But we are convinced that in the longer run, it would be useful, not only for NATO, not only for Ukraine, but also for Russia. Because Russia has this, how to say, unexplainable obsession on Ukraine. And if Ukraine is fully integrated in the West, then Russia could have a chance also to be, how to say, normal country without this post-imperialistic agenda which we are seeing now. And this is a key, litmus test. If we're able, then of course it would be great. And at least you will see there is no political party in Lithuania which is against its unity inside our political environment. But at the same time, the major challenge is to sustain and to ramp up practical assistance to create military system. We can see that there is a certain problem in the system. And because of still some efforts to revive our defense industry and some limited stocks in our disposition, we are not able to provide sufficient number of ammunition and equipment to Ukraine in order to help Ukraine to win this war. And we, in our view, within NATO and the European Union, there is no more important subject than to help Ukraine militarily with all necessary means. And you have seen what's going on at the moment. Russia is continuing shelling of civilian objects and energy infrastructure. And the priority is to deliver necessary air defense assets to Ukraine. It's not sufficient. We need to do more, much more. Not only with additional systems, but also with additional missiles. And there is a lack already, and we need to concentrate all our efforts in this respect. And we also are thinking that better coordination of support is important, and you maybe heard about ideas that NATO should take greater role in this. I hope that during the Washington summit there will be some additional decision taken in this regard. But this will not, in principle, change the situation in the battlefield. But maybe it will help, to streamline a little bit flow of support, both in terms of lethal and non-lethal support, military training, delivery of support, quicker delivery, and long-term development of forces to improve interoperability, especially with NATO forces, which is greatest importance. And those are 4 areas probably, and we will be concentrating on improving coordination within NATO. And then fair burden sharing. Well, it comes to not only to defense investment pledge, to defense spending, but we think that when it comes to the military support to Ukraine, we need to emphasize also that we all need to support Ukraine, not only just few countries, but the whole alliance, in a more, concerted, a more coordinated way. And therefore, fair burden sharing in support of Ukraine should be also part of our discussion in Washington summit. And for example, you noticed this idea of Secretary General to collect $100 billion of US dollars for additional support to Ukraine. we are in principle positive to it, but it's a long-term project. It will be, 5 years term. Then in 5 years term, then in our view, it's too little, because then it means that only 20 billion euros for Ukrainian support. And for example, 2023, this military support accounted more than 20 billion, much more. And therefore, we promote, together with Estonia, with Latvia, and some other countries, to have an analogy to DIP, 2%, to have, for example, 0.25% of GDP spent to military support to Ukraine. Not necessarily from this 2%, but in addition to 2%. And we are discussing this fair burden sharing with the NATO, and I'm sure that in Washington summit there will be some movement in this respect as well. Yeah, those probably the most important issues we are having on the Ukrainian agenda.
Thank you very much for that. Really interesting. And it leads neatly to my next and last question as to what the main outcomes of the Washington summit, besides the Ukraine issue, should be from your perspective. You have already alluded to some elements, but perhaps we can elaborate on it. In addition, let me ask you if there should be an alliance long-term strategy towards Russia in the longer run, and if so, if you would see a need to codify it. And in the same vein, how do you see the alliance deal with the rise of China strategically? And related to that, how could the balance between being a regional alliance and being increasingly confronted with global challenges look like for NATO in the future?
Thank you very much for this good question. I will start saying that first of all, we need to make clear that those new regional defense plans must be executable. They should declare in Washington summit that we are moving towards executability of the new regional plans, which are based on forward defense concept. And we need to solve some remaining issues. This will be probably, in terms of the deterrence and defense, the most important subject of the summit. Then you asked about Russia. We just had recently very important discussions and important decisions that we need to overview our long-term policy on Russia. And we are convinced that this a little bit naive approach, dual-track approach, in principle has failed. We emphasize too much dialogue and less deterrence and defense in the last 30 years after the collapse of Soviet Union. And therefore, we need to look upon those documents and those frameworks we created with Russia. Do we need to keep them? It's a question mark. It's a rhetoric question to all of us. NATO, how to say, future of NATO-Russia founding. Should we be obliged by this founding act, or should we very clearly state that we are not, obliged to follow the clauses of this act, because Russia has already destroyed completely and trampled this act with aggression and military build-up for several years already. And should we go into the more containment type policy towards Russia or not? And those questions we still have to answer, but at least we are starting to develop this long-term policy on Russia. And we are not, at the moment, at least in the foreseeable future, we do not see European security architecture with Russia. We see more European security architecture against us, to contain us. But you never know what will happen in 20 or 30 or 50 years, but in the foreseeable future, it's not realistic, completely unrealistic. We should not cherish this naive hopes that Russia will all of a sudden will change to the positive part. And China is the strategic challenge and to the alliance. But China is, as you know, it's not considered a threat, military threat to the alliance. China is considered as a challenge to our values, to our security, and to our economy. And therefore, we need to deal with all these challenges, which are not kinetic, which we do not expect that China will all of a sudden will start a military operation, because comparing with Russia, threshold in China is higher when it comes to military actions. And Russia has openly declared that, even in their foreign policy doctrine, that military power is part of their foreign policy. And China has a more cautious approach. They are a bit different. They're trying to get more influence with different means, with economic, hybrid, and cyber, and Stratcom, approaching global south with different methods. But we need to also, as you said, NATO is a regional alliance and will remain regional alliance. But we need to have a global outreach, and therefore we are very much, at least Lithuania is very much in favor of as close as possible, as structured as possible relationship with IP4 countries. We will not find closer allies outside alliance than these 4 countries: New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and South Korea. And therefore, it's very important. They show willingness to deepen the relationship. We should respond with a very clear approach that it's our interest. We need to have flagship projects on different areas. In our view, we need to establish closer cooperation with them on defense industry, because all those countries have a strong defense industry. If Europe is not able to revive defense industry just now, then we need to see around the globe what our partners have in this respect. And also, understanding security is similar. And as Japanese, I think Prime Minister said that security in Europe is closely intertwined with security in Asia. And those 4 countries, they contribute a lot to with military and non-military and humanitarian support to Ukraine. And this is additional argument why we should, look seriously to close a relation with these countries. But besides that, of course, NATO should establish closer relationship and try to change the narrative in the global south. It's also a big challenge to us, because China and Russia is doing a lot to keep the Russian and Chinese challenge alive there. And we need to show that NATO is, first of all, alliance based on values. It's alliance which is based on the United Nations Charter, on the right of self-defense and collective defense. And it's completely defensive alliance, and this image of the alliance has to be changed. And this is a very important Stratcom effort of all allies, and also NATO as an organization. And we need to concentrate on that. And we, at the same time, our southern allies, they emphasize challenges stemming from the south. And we understand that and we support that, but it's a bit blurred because these challenges are difficult to describe. And when it comes to the eastern flank, it's much easier to take concrete decisions. Here it's more difficult. But we are forthcoming as far as being in the north, because we understand that if Russia and China will destabilize countries in Sahel and North Africa, and then all the problems of terrorism and illegal migration will be our problems, not only in the south but also in the north, because we also already faced, as you know, 2021 problems of illegal, instrumentalization of migration, both Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and we should better, understand this 360-degree approach when it comes to the alliance. Not only to concentrate narrow-mindedly to the eastern flank, but look upon the whole, security environment, and then we could create more solidarity, more unity within the alliance, and this is useful for all of us.
Thank you so very much. Truly fascinating, and there's so many other issues we could have discussed. Regrettably, we have to come to a close now, and let me thank you so very much for engaging with us today, for your views, your perspectives, and your insights. It has been such a privilege to have you with us today. And as NATO is managing the manifold challenges it is confronted with, and as the preparations for the summit in July continue, allow me to wish you every success in your endeavors. And thank you also to all our listeners. Please stay tuned for the next episodes, as we will continue to explore the alliance's future with senior leaders and officials from NATO and allied and partner countries. Until the next time, goodbye from us, Fritz Rademacher
and Rear Admiral Piotr.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on Strategically Speaking, presented by the George C. Marshall European Center for Strategic Studies. The views expressed in this podcast are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the official policy or position of the George C. Marshall Center, the U.S. Department of Defense, or the U.S. government. We hope today's episode provided valuable insights into NATO's role in today's world. For more content, visit our website at www.marshallcenter.org. Join us next time for more on the unfolding story of NATO.